Good morning. My name is Lindsay Knowler. I am one of the senior solutions specialists at Toon Boom, and I love rigging. I used to be a rigging supervisor, and this stream is something that I've become really excited for. So we have a couple rigs to look at today, which I'm pretty excited. One that was submitted a little while ago, and one that was just submitted. If you would like your rig looked at, please send it in to community@toonboom.com, and we'll be able to get you in here. All right, so today I have a rig from Daniela called Mia, and we also have a Sercha 360 rig. So I'm thinking I want to look at Sercha first. There we go. Now, this is a rig that was sent to us a couple weeks ago. It is actually a little bit of a master controller rig. So I'm going to open this up. Now, I did notice that this network is not horizontal, which is fine. The nice thing about this here, we got the backdrops. So if I wanted to go in and bring these up, so I'll go the head, I'll go the eyes. I could do that really quickly. I thought that was really awesome. I find it a lot easier to work this way. I do notice that a lot of people really enjoy keeping networks in that way. It's personal preference, but for me, it's really going to help if I pull items apart the way that I am used to. So I'm going to really quickly here create a little head network. I've got the mouth over here. We've got a nose. We've got the bangs of our hair, the hair strands. I'm going to go all the way over here. Put the bangs in front. Oh, where is this? Is connected to here. We'll leave that here. All right. And then the body we'll leave down there. All right, we got some pieces down here. I'm going to really quickly see what they are. Is this a color card? Yes. All right, leave that there. We've got a visibility node, which means it's attached to a handle. Let's bring that up. All right. Now, let's see where this master controller is. I know where it is really quickly, but I'm going to use another little trick to find it. I'm just going to open up one of our tabs here, and we actually have a tab for the master controllers. So here, it's our master controller, and I can see here that it's already brought up in our Finder. And if I click on this little icon, it's going to select it, and I can automatically go and look for it. So here we've got our master controller. And I can bring that up. So by turning that on, I'm going to click on this little show controller button right here. So here I've got my master controller. And the one thing that you want to remember when you are working with master controllers is you don't actually want to use your master controller on the keyframe that you've created any of your posing. The reason why is because it will automatically change your posing, and you probably don't want that. You want to preserve it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this group, and I'm going to take this keyframe, and I'm actually just going to copy it just to preserve that position. Oh, we got some, wait a minute, we got some mouth shapes here, so let's double check. All right, so here is a space where nothing is happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put this here. And I'm going to actually use this keyframe where there's no information, and that's where I'm going to actually play with this master controller. That way I'm not ruining any of the info that is being held here, which is the mouse comp. All right, so we've got our master controller. Nice. All right, we've got some perspective going on here. I don't know if there's anybody in the chat that is familiar with our master controller systems, but they are a lot of fun to play with. You can really store a lot of information here. This is really smooth. This looks really good. You've got your perspective shots for going up and also going down. All right. So let's see, what can we talk about? Let's see, we've also got some deformers. Let's give this a quick. Just check out what deformers are here. All right, looks like they're all envelope. All right, and lastly, let's check out inside the eyes. Let's see, we've got some blink cycles. Okay. All right, so let's just check out the timeline really quickly to see what else is here. We can see all of the posing that has been used to create these keyframes. I'm going to do something really quickly. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to update the master controllers. If we've got all the keys here, we can actually do this relatively quickly. All right, so let's see what else is here. Master controller scenes do tend to be a little bit longer. This little lady is really set up. Nice work. All right. That's some really beautiful, subtle animation you got there. One of the benefits of using the master controller is you really are able to get in there and have some really subtle movements. So that's really showing off right here, even just in the posing. Okay, so 360. Stop here. That's probably what 360 stands for right there in the name. All right, so let's take a look at these initial poses here, where we get into our poses for our grid. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open up this master controller because I'm going to look at the grid that actually comes with it. And let's see, where is the button? There is the button. This one right here is the Unroll Wizard. So I'm just going to quickly take a look. And if I click on this button here, Open Wizard, I can see that I have these spaces here. So if I zoom in, it's actually telling me the frames. And this is the one I want, frame 100, frame 110, frame 90, frame 1, frame 50, and frame 40. That's kind of what I'm trying to pinpoint right here. All right, so when she's looking across in a normal fashion, just from left to right, it's going to go frame 70, frame 90, frame 1, and frame 20. All right, so 70, 90, 1, and 20. I'm actually writing that down. 70, 90, 1, and 20. Because it's 9 a.m. and I can't remember those numbers, so I'll be honest. All right, so I'm going to hit cancel. I'm not trying to create anything right now. Just scoping that out. So I can see here that, what are my numbers? 70. So here's 70. She's looking left. Here she's getting to, she's still looking left, but she's more to the center. And then on frame 1, she flips. And she's now in the center, but she's looking to the right. And then on frame 20, she's looking to the right. So I'm going to actually really quickly mark these just by right-clicking. And I'm going to go to mark frames. Here we go. Let's go red. All right, mark frame red. All right, so here, now I can really quickly find those keyframes that if I want to change them. So I'm just going to make a couple of little tweaks, just to show you how to update your master controllers, because I do find that this is a really good tool to use. If anybody in the chat has any questions, feel free to shoot them here. I love talking about master controllers. I find that this tool is really cool. So let's go and find Shift B. I'm going to do this using all the information that we have provided. I don't want to change the network using the master controllers. It will change it up just a little bit. So I'm just going to leave the network as it is. I'm going to take the eye. I'm just going to shift it so that it's on her face. Here we go. Just a little tweak. Okay, so she's looking right. All right, and I'll do that for here as well. And I'm just going to go in and make some really small movements here just so that we can adjust. We can show, let's maybe move this hair up so that it's not breaking in with the ear. There we go. Just a little tweak. And maybe I will connect this one right here. Oh. All right, so I'm temporarily moving the pivots around right now so that I can have a little bit more control. So here we go. I want to keep this one disconnected to the ear like that, but I want to connect it over here. So I've put the pivot point here so that it kind of nails it in that position. Helps me with a little bit of that control. All right. So there I've got a little tweak. If I want to create a little bit more, what is the word? Perspective, I can shift this ear back just a little bit. There we go. And I think I'm going to do that for this one as well. There we go. All right. So that is my extreme right and my extreme left. What I can also do here is create this deformer and bring this in a little bit just to hide the back of her head right there. And I'll check on this side too to see if it needs it. That looks good. All right, so little tweaks. All right. All right. All right, I'm gonna leave frame 90 and 1 alone. And I'm gonna go back to that master controller. So I'll find that in the network. I'm gonna bring open that unroll pose again. All right, and the next thing that I'm going to look for is I'm going to do the ups and the downs. Actually, I'm going to go in and do some small tweaks here. So that is frame 80, that is frame 100, 110, and 10. So 80, 100, I believe, 100, 110, and 10. Okay, and then while I'm here, I'm going to look at the cancel. I'm going to look at down here as well. I've got 60, 50, 40, and 30. All right, so 60, 50, 40, and 30. Right, cancel, cancel. All right, so I'm going to mark those ones as well. I'm just going to mark them a different color. All right, so 80. So when she's looking up, we're gonna mark these yellow, and 60. Actually, you know what? I do have shortcuts set up. I never remember these shortcuts because I use them not too frequently. So why don't I just mark these as pink, which I've got my shortcut set up as. So that would be 80, 100, 110, and 10. So back here. All right. So the same fixes that I've changed, or same changes that I made in the first pass, I'm just going to do up here as well. So I'm going to keep her eye right here. Just going to go and change that, make that little. There you go. And I'm going to do the same one for over here. Temporarily moving pivot points is a really nice way to get the rig to do what you want. A lot of times you'll hear a little bit of complaining going on, like, I can't get the rig to do what I want. And that is so common. We hear that a lot. Don't worry. And temporarily moving your pivot points does work. You can really ground an object to the side that you need to, just like this. Pin that right there. I guess there's the formers on here. Okay, there we go. All right, so small tweaks. Again, I'm going to leave the middle poses. And let me just check this one. All right, perfect. All right, so let's see. The next one was 60, 50, 40, and 30. So 60. All right, let's get this small tweak. And also check on the ears. So actually, I forgot to do that on the 10th one. So here, I'm just going to shift that in just a little bit. And then on here. So once again, we're just trying to push the perspective just a little bit more. Just with these tiny little tweaks. And 40 and 30. Check on this one, 40 and 30. There we go. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're actually going to quickly take our master controller, and we're actually just going to reuse the keys that we already have. Again, we haven't changed anything but the keyframes in the scene, and so that's what's going to give us the flexibility of using this master controller. So here we go. Let's start this one more time. So we're just going to grab our master controller, and we're going to also double check to see which composite it's plugged into. This one just has the one composite in the scene, so it's pretty easy to find. But you're always going to want to know what composite you are plugging your master controller into. Sometimes you can even create your own master controller composite. That's a trick that I like to do. That way it makes it really easy to spot. I'll show you what that looks like, but I'm not going to use it in this case because I just want to use the network as it is. So master controller. So something like that, which just makes it really, really easy to find, stands out, and you'll see why in a second. All right, so I'm going to grab this master controller. I'm going to go to the same button, the Unroll Wizard, and I'm going to go to Open Wizard. And here, what this is actually doing is it already has those keyframes logged into this little grid. So everything that I've made changes to here is actually going to be recreated in another master controller. So these are already green, which means that they are successfully reading those keyframes. So I don't have to make any other changes. But what I am going to do is give it a name. So we'll stick with Sercha. So SURCHA. R S H A and head MC, and I'm going to put a 2 on the back. You can reuse the naming system. It will replace the script, but just in case there's ever an issue, I like to go with a name that is not the original name. So I'm going to hit create, and here is it's asking me which composite I'd like to connect it to. Like, again, I only have the one, so I'm going to use the top Sercha composite, and you can also kind of see that here. If you are confused with the two, we are in a rig. So this is saying that we are not at the top of the node view. We are inside the group Sercha. And since there's only one composite there, here is our list. If this was a bigger master controller or a cutout character, we might have more composites. And that is why I like to isolate the master controller composites a little bit more so that I can really quickly go through this list. Sometimes it can be pretty long, so it's really nice to have that there so you can find it. And we're going to hit OK. And it's going to give me this. I'm going to say save. It's saving it in the scripts folder of the character. So there we go. I've got another one. I can keep this window open, or I can push it to the side, or I can close it. Here is my master controller. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to really quickly replace this master controller for this master controller. There we go. And I don't want both of them showing at the same time. That will be confusing. So I do want to make sure that I'm using the one. All right, and now we can give this a test. And once again, you don't want to test your master controllers on the keyframe that you have set up for yourself. So I'm going to go to, I believe it was this one. Here we go. And now we can use our master controllers, and we can see there that I've made those changes very easily, and I've updated my master controller. Now, if this rig was on a floor and you wanted to give your master controller to a friend who is using this rig as well, because you've updated it, right? You want to share that good work. You could easily do that. That person would just have to swap out those master controllers, and because none of the key elements were changed in the making of this rig, you could do that. So you could actually really easily put this in a library and make that shareable to your community. So that is how quick it is to update a master controller. This was a great little rig, and it's a lot of fun to play with. I hope that you guys get to do this a little bit more. I definitely see a lot of these being created on the internet. And to be honest, I love them. So keep up the great work, guys. And we're going to jump into another rig. So this little rig came to us, and this is a cute little character. This is a lot of fun to play with. All right, so let's see what this is. We have an unset peg right here. Oh, we got one right over here as well. All right, so the nice thing about this is we can take a look here, and we can actually create really quickly. We can put these. Oh, what do we got here? We are using drawing pivots here. All right. So since we are using drawing pivots, let's see this one here. All right. So our drawing pivot is set up. So that's a good sign. All right. So I'm not super familiar with drawing pivots. I know that we can put that pivot back in its spot. Let's see. There we go. It is connected to the deformer. I'm just going to move it so that it is actually connected to the peg. There we go. That's what it is. So now we've got our arms will rotate on their shoulder. Now what's connected to the deformer? So let's take a look here. Make sure everything's working. Yeah, there we go. All right, so real quick fix there. And I believe this rig belonged to someone named Daniela. I'm assuming that the rig is named Mia. So yeah, there you go. There's one thing that you might want to swap out right there so that your arms have the correct pivot point when you want to grab the whole thing. Your shoulders. So that's a real quick fix. One of the main differences with rigs actually is when you're rigging with pivot points in the drawings, it's a little bit different setup than when you're rigging with pegs. I am more familiar with rigging with pegs, but I have done a little bit of work with the drawing pivots. When you are using drawing pivots, you just have to make sure that your apply embedded pivot on parent peg is set up right here. And what that does is setting a pivot point on your drawing, which is actually this tool right here. So drawing pivots. When you use this, it actually gives you a little pivot point location, a target. Let's call it a target, registration point. And so it'll actually give you that, and you can kind of move that around. And that's actually what the peg is going to be using. If you notice, when I open up this layer properties for the peg, our pivot axes are set to 0, 0. And that is because it is using the information that is stored on these drawings. All right. So if anybody has any questions about drawing pivots, feel free to shoot them in. I'll try to answer. I don't get to look at too many rigs with them, but I can do my best. All right. So I'm going to quickly take a look and see what she's got. All right. She's got some noodle limbs. Bone deformers in the feet. This is actually a trick that I really like. I do like to use bone deformers on shoes. I find that they are a really nice way to kind of bend the object, to kind of, you have that heel to toe very easily here. So I really like bone deformers on shoes. I find that to be a really handy trick. All right. Let's see here. We've got, let's take a look at this. All right. So here we've got a hat. You can see here when I am deforming this hat, when I move the tip of the hat, I get a little bit of movement right down here. So if I zoom in and show you, you can see that we've got a little bit of movement there. So I think what I'm going to do is spend the rest of this moment, we're going to take that hat and we're going to change it a little bit. All right, we got a lower body. All right, if we have time, I might spend some time on the connection point right here, just to show you a little bit of a trick to get that as well, but I'm not too concerned about that, actually. That looks really nice. But this hat, we can actually make this a lot more flexible. This will be a fun one, actually. So the first thing I'm going to do is separate the legs and the lower body, just to kind of make some space in the network. I'm not afraid of making a lot of space in the network. All right, where is this hat? The hat is here. So all of this. All right. Now, once again, composites here are your friends. Don't be afraid of using more composites. A good general rule that I like to use is no composite should have over 10 connections. That's something that I typically follow. So something like this, you have all this information here. So the skirt, I know that it's going into 2 places, but you can use a composite for this. You can also probably use another composite for some of these items. The hair is at the back. But yeah, don't be afraid of using composites to kind of try to organize these connections. It just makes it a little bit easier. So for this instance, we've got our hat and our head. All right, so here it is. I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger to give it the space it deserves. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the hat drawing peg, and the hat drawing. So I'm going to just, and I might as well take the deformer as well, even though I won't be using it. So I'm going to copy, I'm going to paste special. So create new columns, always create drawing files, and hit OK. And let's see, this one is going to be the original hat. And I'm going to actually create a brim that will also be just as flexible. So not only are you going to have the tip of the hat, I'm going to give you access to a very floppy hat brim that you can play with her face and get that in her eyes. And if you want some secondary action there, it'll be a lot of fun. So here, I'm going to put a composite. All right, so we've got the hat overlay going out here, and the back of it's all right. So I'm going to give this a composite. So I'm just going to hit copy paste, and I'm going to plug this in here. And I'm going to give this one another one. So copy paste, and I'm going to go here. All right, so what I'm doing right now is just creating two composites so that I don't have to constantly go up and down and look for the items in the network, but I'm able to kind of focus on what is happening here. All right, so when I'm making a change, a structural change to a network, all right, so we did just get a question. I'm going to answer that, but I'm going to quickly go over what I'm doing, and then I will come back to this question. The question is, can you please show or discuss how or would the process of rigging with drawing pivots against rigging with pegs? All right, I'll come back to that. I will come back to that before we finish up today. But just to talk to you about what I'm going to do right now, or what I'm doing right now with these two composites, because what I'm doing is I'm making a structural change to the rig. So what I want to do is preserve what we have, preserve any of the information. I don't want to change it too much, but I do need to change it a little bit. So the first thing is this deformer won't work for the brim of the hat. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to rename this hat to be hat brim so that I don't get confused in the making of these extra pieces. And I'm going to do that with the peg as well. All right, so I'm going to take the brim and I'm going to put that in front. And by in front, I'm just taking the connection that's already here. So I'm kind of following the network of what has already been provided. And if I want it to look exactly the same way, I'll just throw that overlay layer on top of or inside that network and connect that to this new drawing. Now, this new drawing is the exact same as this drawing. So here I have my line art. On my overlay, I have all of this, and my color art has all the colors, and there's nothing on the underlay. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to change my artwork just a little bit. So the next thing, I have to connect my peg to, because right now this is a free floating peg. I do need to create the peg that's going to connect everything here. So I'm going to create a quick hat master peg. And I'm also going to give that its drawing pivot. All right, so I'm going to put this here, and I'll connect that here. So now I have my hat master. All right, so now I have a peg that's controlling both, and a peg that's going to control both of a peg that's going to control both the top of the hat and the brim of the hat. So now I'm going to go in and change my artwork. So in my hat brim, I know I don't want the top of the hat. So I'm actually going to come down to the line art, and I'm going to steal this artwork here, and I'm going to make some changes. So I'm going to add some vector points, snap to contour. And I will smooth this out. If you can't grab your handle, don't forget you can use Alt or Option to grab those handles. Looks like I have an extra piece of line there. There we go. There we go. All right, so here is the first piece of the brim of the hat. So if I go to my overlay, which I won't be needing now, so I'm actually going to delete that. So here is my overlay. I'm going to delete this extra piece. And I'm going to go to here. I'm going to take this artwork, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it. And I'm just going to unpaint the pieces that I don't need. So there we go. Sometimes when I'm doing this process, and as you can still see the hat tip in the background. You can deactivate the other drawing, and it'll really help you isolate all the extra pieces. So there we go. I've got my line and my color. I can go in, and if I cut the color, I can actually really quickly delete those lines and then paste that back. So now I've got my isolated pieces. I'm not going to worry too much about the back and the front of her hat just yet, because I think if I've got the time, I'm going to make another change. So I'm going to deactivate that real quick, come back over here, and I'm going to do the same thing, but now I'm focusing on the top of the hat. So I'm going to delete these pieces here, and I will actually leave this. All right, so now I'll do the same thing. I'm going to copy this artwork and I'm going to paste it here, and I will unpaint all the extra pieces and cut, delete, paste. All right, so now, and I got to take care of the overlay. So I'm going to get rid of this overlay for now and double check. All right, so now I've broken up the hat into two separate pieces. They're not quite working yet together, but we're getting close. Now, if I want to give her hat to a little bit more character and a lot more floppiness, which I'm a big fan of. I love big floppy hats. All right, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to copy this drawing, and I'm going to create the hat brim front. Copy B2B. All right, and I'm going to create a hat brim back. So this is going to become the BK. We're going to do a little bit of engineering here. Save my scene. All right, I'm going to actually create a little bit more space within this network. So here. Pull that up and pull this over. Okay, so now we've got our hat, the top of our hat, the back of our brim, and the front. So here we can do two things. We can connect the hat master to the back of the brim like this. I can also take a really quick cheat and just go, okay, the front of the brim is going to control the back of the brim, or I can even go vice versa. The back of the brim is going to control the front of the brim, which is actually probably the one I'm going to go with. And I'm also going to connect the back of the brim to the back of the hat. That way it'll automatically go behind the hair. I already know that that works. It's already at the very back of my network. So I'm going to take that route. And what I've done to separate the brim from the top of the hat, I'm going to do again. And I'm actually going to connect the back to, or I'm going to chop up the artwork again, but separate the front of the hat from the back of the hat. So one more time, and I'll hide the other piece so I can't see it through. So this is the front of the hat, so I don't need this line here. And I don't need this color. So that's the front of the hat. And the back of the hat. All right, the back of the hat, I'm not going to use this middle line. And for here, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use my dropper tool, and I'm just going to recolor that. And I think there's a, I do think there's a little line in there. Let's see if we can grab it. I just flatten it. There we go. Disappeared. All right, so now we've got the back, the front. All right, so we're getting closer to being almost finished. All right, so we've got our hat peg here. We've got our hat peg here and our hat peg here, and our pegs are not set. So let's see what's causing them not to be right now. Let's check. Got our pivot point set to pivot. Okay, let's see. The pivot is there, and it is not taking in the pivot information. All right. So here we are. This is exciting. This is me running into my first little challenge here. Let's see. We do need to get this pivot to be here. This is where we want it. Actually, in this case, we're going to actually move it a little bit higher. But the goal is to actually get your hat to go like this. And we can even change this back here. We can round this out. This is something that I used to say often. There are no right angles in rigs, especially humans, because if you take a look at your own body, there's not too many right angles. So I actually like to round out these kinds of connections, and that's going to give you a little bit more flexibility here. We're still going to work on this peg, but now when I rotate that, it gives you a little bit more control. We can even get even fancier and add some cutters, but for now I do want to get that peg hooked up here. I hope I can. Let's see. So we've got this pivot and we've got this pivot. The main difference between the drawing pivots and the peg pivots, your information is stored on your pegs, but you are driving the pegs or the pivot information from the drawings. Now, this is something that, again, I've seen it before. I have done a little bit of work with them, but it's not my main way of working. When I work, I use the pivots to control all the information. So all of the pegs are stored, or all the peg information is stored on, sorry, the pivot information is stored all on the pegs. A little bit of a tongue twister there for you, I'm sorry. But the nice thing about drawing pivots, the one benefit that you do get over them, and that is why a lot of people still use them, is it allows you to actually set multiple pivot locations for different drawings. And so it kind of lets the drawing drive that pivot information. So if your pivot, it needs to change from drawing to drawing. So for instance, if you're drawing, in this case, this hat is going to rotate from what it's connected to, which is the top of the head. Like this, but there's a lot of instances where, you know, one drawing, you'd want your peg information to be over here, but then in another case, you might want your peg information to be over here. That is something that a drawing pivot can do. You can store that information just by creating another drawing, which would be on here. Let's see. Let me see. I don't think that there's any other drawings in this character. So I don't think there's going to be an example of two pivot points. But and then what that does is when you're rotating your character, the drawing pivots, if you add a second pose, usually what happens with the second drawing pivot is it'll just be in a completely different location. When you're using the peg information is always going to rotate around the blue dot, and the blue dot will remain totally stable. It will not move. So where you set it the first time is where it's going to be the second time. And so, you know, it's a catch-22 system. You're either going to use the one way or you're going to use the other way. And all your information will be stored on the pegs if you are not animating with the pegs, rigging with the pegs. So it's a tough call. I don't think that there's much pros or cons that are really going to outweigh the other. It's really up to the user and how you've learned to rig a lot of times. I do find that keeping the information locked into the pegs instead of doing this, the extra drawing pivots, I do find it does save time a little bit because you're not setting up two systems, but it's not going to save you a ton of time in the long run anyway. So I hope that answers your question. Right now, I do still want to get this peg set up, but I also know that I keep a handy-dandy notebook close by, but it's in an older notebook, and that book is shelved. So let's see. I could really quickly cheat and just do this real quick, but I feel like that is not what you're looking for today. We will do that real quick. All right, so we've got our peg information here and here. Now, we are changing the design a little bit. You can see here that I've added this line. You can either keep that line added. The other thing that we can do is we can actually play a little bit more with this. You can see here that my hat brim, as I move it around, it's automatically breaking with the character. So here, it gives us a little bit of flexibility, but not quite the flexibility I'm looking for. So what I wanted to spend time on and show you guys is also how to create an extra cutter so that we can play a little bit more with this hat brim. All right, so what I'm going to do is jump back into this drawing here, and I'm going to extend this drawing. So I'm going to grab these vector points, and I'm going to go to my, I'll do the same thing. I like to copy my artwork and paste. And I typically will remove the artwork and then quickly use my dropper to repaint it. And delete the line. All right, so now I've got this giant, which actually looks pretty cute, actually. But I've got this giant brim, and I don't want it to be that big. What I actually want it to do is I'm going to have it cut through the back of this brim. So I'm going to bring in a cutter. And I definitely want to cut this, and I'm going to turn it into an inverted cutter, and I'm going to hook that up here. Now, what this is going to allow me to do is I now have a little bit more flexibility where I can pull this all the way down. I can even change, I can move this so that it's in front of her eyes. Let's put that at the front of her face so that when her hat comes down, it does cover everything. So I'm going to reset that. The next thing that I'm going to do is I don't want to cut that by the actual full brim of the hat. You can see here that I'm using the whole hat, and what that's doing is it's causing me to lose the black outline that is there. So I'm going to bring in another node called an auto patch, so AUTO, and I'm going to hook that in here, and that's going to allow me to bring back that line. And now finally, if I wanted to go back to the original design, I'm going to need one more cutter. So I'm going to copy and paste this one. And I'm going to take the back brim of the hat. And since I know that that line worked, if you remember, we put our line on our line layer. I'm going to bring in a line node, line art node. Whoops, I don't want that to be connected there. I'm going to isolate that line node, and I'm going to cut that. And I'm going to cut that by, if you can guess, the hat. Oh, not the hat brim. Sorry, not the hat brim, the hat. This one. There we go. So now I'm going to bring in, because I'm getting specific with my layers, I'm going to clean this up. And I'm also going to bring in one more layer because I've only got my line art connected to this composite. I'm going to bring in a color art. There we go. So there we go. There is one more thing. We've got a little bit of a outline happening right here. All right, so I've got my color art put in here. I've got my my hat is being cut by the whole entire hat. So this is actually giving me this little indent right here. So if I create another auto patch, it's going to actually remove that for me. It's going to give a smoother connection. So I'm going to bring in that auto patch, and I'm going to use that to cut the hat instead. There we go. And then lastly, I'm just going to layer my hat brim behind that hat top. So now when I go in and move this hat with the deformer, it does not interfere with the hat brim. And if you wanted to create your deformers on your hat brim, you could also do that. So there we have it. If you wanted to, we could also create a little bit of a change here. We've got, we do have, what do you call this? We could create some cutting here, but I'm not going to change that too much right now. But this definitely would look really good with a envelope deformer where she could go and she could kind of pull this over her eyes and have a little bit of fun there. So if there's any other questions, I'd love to hear them. See, we have a couple minutes here. Something that I noticed here is we do have an extra little piece at her waist. Now, I have added this in rigs before. I don't know if it's needed here, though. Usually when I add something, like in this case, it is her hips underneath her skirt. This might actually get in your way for animating. So I don't even know. You might not even need this piece. You could probably deactivate this or remove it from your network, as well as this one here. But something that you can do is you could take your artwork for your skirt, and you could use a circle joint here. And what that'll do, it'll just give you a little bit of a really clean rotation when you are creating a bend. So let's say her lower body. So here you can see there's a little bit of a divot, creates a little bump. So just the same way that you would do it with the arms, this is actually a really good location to use that same trick so that you can get that really clean hinge. It depends on the design, though. Sometimes people want to have a little bit more of a hand-drawn look to their rig. So that is something that you can kind of weigh your however you feel. And if you wanted to, what I like to do to go and clean that up, I'll do that really quickly. One way that I do it is because the pivot point is already set in this on this rig, it becomes a little bit harder to change the drawing and create the circle, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible. So if you're very careful, what I tend to do And there is unfortunately no way to actually show your pivot point in your drawings. But what I do, whoops, hold down Shift, creating this. And what line thickness? We got a 5, so let's change this to 5. And I can leave it as blue. Here we go. So let's see. Let me go back to my pivot point. All right. So this is a little bit of a challenge because you can't see your pivot point. What I actually do is I will grab a Post-it note. I'm trying to see if I have a Post-it note in my office right now. And I actually put the corner of the pivot point, or the corner of the Post-it note, right on the pivot point. And then I actually go into the circle and I match up the pivot point of the middle of the circle to where I could eyeball the pivot point. So what you guys can't see is the Post-it note that is on my computer, but you can kind of see that as I toggle the two tools, that pivot point isn't jumping too much. So this is my cheat on how to kind of create a new pivot point location there. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm actually going to copy it into the other drawing right here. So I'm also going to put that there. I left it blue on purpose, so it would make it really easy for me to chop this artwork. And we're going to do each one of these one at a time, and we're just going to update the artwork. So this is a really nice trick. I find it really quick. So we've got the new circle already created in the chest drawing and the skirt drawing. I've already started cleaning up the skirt, so I'm going to finish that one. Now the goal here is to keep the outside of the circle as circly as possible, and you want to connect the outside pieces to it. So one way that you can do that is you can do what I just did, which is just grab that and connect it. If you want to preserve any information that's here, I always just create a new pivot point or a vector point, and there you go. When you are getting into this, again, we want to keep that outside circle as circly as possible, as perfect as possible. So you can actually hold down, I believe it's Alt, and it's going to, nope, not Alt. Just want to make sure I've got the right shortcut for you. It's Option. No, it's not Option. Come on. There we go. It is Alt. If we hold down Alt, it will break those handles automatically, and it just means you can kind of focus on the one side without breaking the other. So I'm gonna leave it there. All right, and then I'll do the same thing to the other side. So I can create another vector point to preserve the information that's there, and I'm just gonna really quickly connect. My Alt seems to be giving me a little bit of a hassle. All right, but there we go. A little bit of a lump there. If we wanted to smooth that out, there we go. All right, so now we can go in and we can change the drawing's color, and you can already see that her waist is changing just a little bit. Now, once again, I'm going to take all this and I'm going to remove that and paste. And then I'll use my dropper tool. And if I cut that artwork, I can also cut the lines and put that back. So now I've updated my artwork in my skirt. And I'm going to do the same. Oh, what am I missing? Oh, in the chest. Here we go. There we go. So I'm going to remove the artwork that is below. And I'm going to remove the artwork that is up top. So here, it's already connected. I might move that one in just a little. And same thing here. And now change the color. And if you ever notice that your line breaks like this, there is a little bit of a trick that you can do. There is a very shortcut where if you change to your black arrow, when you select your lines, you can say you want these to be round, and it's going to automatically change that gap so that they're not flat. The other thing that you can do, and I'll undo to show you, is in your contour editor tool. And in this case, I already know that this is going to change. I'm going to preserve this artwork, so I'm actually going to put a vector point here and here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm selecting this vector point, and you can say two become one, so join pencil lines, and that'll also take care of it. Sometimes when you join the pencil lines without preserving that artwork, it does change your shape a little bit. So that's why I do that. But here we go. It looked like it didn't. So now I can do this. I am also going to Command X. Control X. Wrong tool. All right, and I'm just going to, oh, wait, undo. Here we go. Move that aside, then I'll paste, then I can drop it. There we go. All right, so here, she's got a little bit of a new waist. Whoop. And we've got our pivot point here. And we're going to move, I'm going to move my lower body pivot point so that it matches the skirt. So I'm just going to copy over this information to this information. No, I'm not. I'm going to steal. Oh, yes, I am. There's no giant pivots here. So I'm going to steal. It's actually set to 0. All right, perfect. There we go. Whoop. Nope, I'm in a loop. Here we go. We've got our lower body peg and our skirt peg. Our skirt is set to 0. We've got a drawing pivot there. All right, so I'm going to copy, bring up that drawing pivot, put that here. Bring this to 0. There we go. All right, so now our lower body rotates on that circle. A little bit of an adventure there. And our skirt rotates on that. And then we can also do that for the chest. But what would be more important would be our upper body also rotates on that circle. So here we can do the same thing to our upper body peg that we just did to, and this peg that we did to our lower body. So if these all share the same pivot points, because if you think your upper body and your lower body is connected to your hips, they don't have to have the different. You don't want them to have different pivot points. So you want to have those all at the same location. So here we can do the same thing, and I'm just going to create the copy. See if it'll. Okay, so upper body, steal that location, set this to 0. Okay. And same with the upper body. So set this to 0. And now you've got your upper body and your lower body rotating from the same pivot points. And you've got a little bit of a smoother rotation there to help you with your flexibility. There you go. So that is all of the time that we have for this month. But I'm super excited to do this again next month. Please send in your rigs once again. You can submit them at community@toonboom.com. And That's wonderful. Stay tuned for next month, you guys, and have a nice day. Goodbye.